It is exactly 9:25. This is News and Views on Salam Media, and we are now going to be looking at expectations of the 2024 budget speech, hoping and praying that there's some good news for us as consumers. Our grocery basket, our taxes. I don't know. What else do we talk about when we talk about the budget speech? Economist Dawie Roodt is joining us to talk to us about, hopefully, something that's going to be consumer friendly. Dawie Roodt, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the program. Are my expectations way too high?
Hello, Julie. I'm afraid so, yes. There simply is not going to be good news. I'm very sorry to say.
Oh dear. What does it look like? What are your expectations? And I'm
Okay.
also wondering on the issue of taxes. Is it the middle class once again that's going to be carrying the tax burden?
Okay, I think before I give you a few expectations, a few ideas, and what I think is going to happen, maybe just the context, because I think that is important. Let's just understand what is going on here. Now, what we have is an economy that's just not performing for various reasons. The economy is just not growing. If the economy is not growing, the Minister of Finance cannot extract as much taxes as he would like to. So what has been happening recently, the Minister of Finance or previous Ministers of Finance, they just kept on spending despite the fact that the economy simply couldn't afford these high levels of spending. So the Minister of Finance started borrowing a lot of money. And today the debt levels of the state is standing at record high levels. So the fiscal accounts, what the Minister of Finance is responsible for, is in very deep trouble because they've been spending too much money. So that's one issue. Another issue is that in the past, what we've done, when you talk about government, there are various levels of government, like central government, and this is what the budget is supposed to be about. But there are other levels of government as well, like, for example, the local authorities and the state-owned enterprises like Eskom and Telkom and so on. They are also under government control. Now, what has been happening, and we all know this, the past decade or two, is that the local authorities and the state-owned enterprises, many of them, just about the majority of them, have been run into the ground financially and operationally. So they are not really independent, financially viable institutions anymore. And they are looking at the Minister of Finance to bail them out financially. And the Minister of Finance have been bailing them out financially more so in recent years. So their woes actually need to be added to the Minister of Finance's own accounts, which he's probably not going to do. So the point I want to make, the Minister of Finance is going to give us a set of numbers, but the numbers are going to be far too optimistic. It's going to, in fact, it is supposed to be much worse if you do it correctly by including Transnet and Eskom and the like into these numbers. Okay, so that's where we are. We are in very, very deep trouble. So what can be expected? Well, there are various ways of looking at the budget. I've already mentioned the debt levels that's become unsustainable. The Minister of Finance is borrowing far too much money because he spends too much money. So there are basically two things or two sides of the budget that the minister can make some adjustments to. The one is on the revenue side, on the various taxes. Now, I did mention the economy is very weak and the economy cannot afford further significant tax increases. Having said that, I do believe the Minister of Finance is going to increase certain taxes. Some of the taxes that he's going to increase will be taxes like, for example, sin taxes on alcohol and on tobacco products as an example, and also the fuel levy. I believe those sort of
Sure.
smallish taxes will be increased, and that always happens. But if you talk about the major taxes, like, for example, the most important tax is personal income taxes, I don't think the Minister of Finance is going to make significant changes to that. What I do think he could do is not making changes to the income tax brackets, which then means that effectively there will be an increase in personal income taxes because of the effect of inflation. So I expect that to happen. So there will be, but it's not going to be significant, but still, there will be a sort of a backdoor way of increasing personal income taxes, but not significantly. And the reason for that is because we just don't have enough rich people anymore, and many rich people are leaving the country in any event. Another major tax is, of course, personal, or rather, value-added taxes. I don't think the Minister of Finance will increase that either, because politically that is extremely difficult to do, especially before an election. And then the third one is a company tax and various company taxes. There are quite a number. And I don't think the Minister of Finance will make any changes to that either. And the reason for that is because our company taxes are very, very high compared to international norms. So making South Africa quite unattractive as an investment destination. So on the tax side, a few small adjustments here and there, nothing significant. On the spending side, That's going to make life very difficult for the minister. Because, like I've said, all these state owned enterprises, they need a lot of money. They need bailouts. And he will have to give them money, like Transnet, for example. If not, then the railroads are going to collapse. Additionally to that, there are promises on the NHI. So let's see what's going to happen on the NHI. The president did mention he's looking for his pen. So there must be something in the budget about the NHI. On top of that, there is also the possibility, well, the so-called COVID grant will be extended. We know about this. So for how long? And will it be replaced by a basic income grant one day? Let's see. There will be something about that in the budget as well. And then, of course, some other issues, like, for example, the wage bill. It is far too high. We pay our civil servants too much. There are too many of them. They are unproductive in most cases. So will they again force the Minister of Finance to give them above inflation increases? Let's hope not. But again, there's an election around the corner. And then I did mention that the debt of the state. The debt of the state has reached record levels. That means that we have to pay more interest on all this debt, and that will have to go up as well, the interest component of the Minister of Finance. So there's the budget in a nutshell for you. On the revenue side, taxes, well, nothing significant, a few small increases. On the expense side, huge pressure on the Minister of Finance. And above all of this, of course, there's a budget around the corner, or rather an election around the corner. And the Minister of Finance, he's a politician overall, and politicians do not make difficult and unpopular decisions before an election.
You talked about bailouts, and we know the bailouts are obviously Transnet, Eskom. SAA is back on the scene as well. Undoubtedly, they're also going to be given finances to be up and running. Um, how much of that is taking away from the man in the street regarding grants? Perhaps, that middle class that I spoke about, the taxes, them being taxed. And when you say that the minister is stretched, he's in deep trouble regarding finances, where's he going to get the money, very especially for those bailouts, like Eskom, like Transnet, like SAA, etc.?
He's
SOE.
simply gonna borrow more money. As simple as that. He's going to borrow money from the private sector. He's going to borrow money from the pension funds and from unit trust. He's going to borrow money from the banks, and he's going to borrow money from foreign lenders. In the
How
meantime, yeah.
Dawie, let me ask a very important question. What does he use as collateral when he
Yeah.
borrows money?
When he borrows money, it's quite interesting, actually. What he does, there's something called a government bond. There are various different instruments like treasury bills and government bonds and all sort of things. But the important one is government bonds. And this government bond is a little piece of paper. Nowadays, it's not paper anymore. It's just electronic. But it's a little piece of paper denominated in million rands, usually. And there's an interest that the Minister of Finance needs to pay on this. So he basically sells these government bonds. He creates them out of nothing. And he will sell it to the... So basically what happens, he borrows the money. And we call it with government bonds. These government bonds are traded in the market, and you can buy and sell government bonds in the market if you want to. And the banks quite often buy some of these government bonds and they resell it back to the South African Reserve Bank. And in return, the banks then get money from the South African Reserve Bank. So if you follow the whole path, you will see the Minister of Finance creates a bond out of nothing. You sell it to the bank, as an example. The bank will sell it to the Reserve Bank, and the Reserve Bank will make money out of nothing and give it back to the banks. So it's a kind of a circular thing.
Okay, sounds like a Ponzi if you ask me.
It is pretty much close to a Ponzi. Not completely, but there's some financial shenanigans, yes.
So, having said that, is there any good news as far as a layperson like you and I? Is there any good news for us at the end of this budget speech? What can we look forward to? I'll tell you why I asked this question. I've come across very many small businesses who are saying that internal revenue, the tax revenue department is, really honing in on them and asking for continuous audits over the past 5 and 10 years. So obviously that indicates that they're looking for money and they're putting pressure on small businesses. And I should imagine lay people, and professional people as well. What's the story there? How can we get them to stop this? I see it as harassment because they're looking for money and they really are now stretching us to the nth limit.
In fact, this morning, right this morning, I spoke to a friend of mine that's an auditor. And this friend of mine told me that there are many small businesses actually going bankrupt because of the aggressive approach by SARS. SARS simply disallows certain expenses or like VAT returns and things, VAT refunds and so on. And many businesses are going belly up because of the way that SARS are treating businesses. And the reason why SARS are treating and why SARS is so extremely aggressive is because they ran out of money. They ran out of money because they're spending too much money. So that is the problem. Our problem in South Africa is actually not economic, it's not financial, it is political. We've got a government that's caused immense damage to all sort of things in the South African economy, and we are paying a very dear price for that today. And one of those prices that we are paying as other businesses, especially small businesses, are being harassed by SARS, and many of them in the process actually close their doors as well.
Can we do anything to push back against the
Yes,
harassment from SARS? What can we
yes.
do?
Oh, yes. There's something you can do, and I'm not advising anybody to break any laws. Stick to within the laws, and you can, of course, you can appeal or decisions by SARS. You can take them to court, to the tax court, and you can do all those sort of things. But the reality is, it's not actually SARS' fault what's happening here. The reality is, it's the fault of the politicians. The politicians have been mismanaging the fiscal accounts of South Africa for many years, and now they ran out of money. And they are putting huge pressure on on SARS to try to collect more and more money and to squeeze more money out of this economy. So the problem really is not SARS. In fact, they're actually doing a relatively good job. The problem is that we've got mismanagement by the state-owned enterprises, many local authorities, and the fiscal accounts by a government that is simply doing a lot of damage to this economy. That is the way to push back. And there's an election around the corner. Make use of your power to push back.
And in the meantime, we're being squeezed dry by SARS, is all I can say. Dawie, thank you indeed for your not very promising expectations of the 2024 budget speech. And we probably will be doing a post analysis sometime soon. But thank you for your time.
My pleasure, of course.
That was Dawie Roodt. He's an economist talking about the expectations of the 2024 budget speech. It is 9:37. News and views on Salam Media, and we're standing by for our next guest. We'll be wrapping up with a COO at Cotlands, and that, of course, is Monica Stach.